Hello, this is Lisa Harrison, and today I am speaking with Chris Thomas, a healer and author of, I believe, 11 books at last count. Chris has been somewhat psychic since the age of 7 and has the ability to read the Akashic Records. And I want to welcome Chris Thomas.
Lisa, nice to be here.
Lovely. Now, in one of your interviews, I did hear you talk about having the ability quite young to read auras, and you seemed to develop psychic ability quite young, but it wasn't really supported, and you suppressed it somewhat. I mean,
No, well, my mother had comparatively strong Christian views, and so essentially anything to do with any kind of psychic abilities was heavily frowned upon, to put it mildly.
So did you really suppress it? Can you do that kind of thing? Can you switch it off, or did you just stop talking about it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Like everything else, it was just a question of not working with it.
But if
Trying to think of something else,
Right. So you could stop yourself from seeing people's auras?
Not entirely, but I stopped talking about it and didn't really develop what I could do.
And when did that change for you?
When I was early 20s, I met somebody who was developing themselves into their own version of mediumship, and so really started to pick it up from there and investigate things much more deeply, and found that I had, like a lot of people do, obviously, I had a very natural healing ability, which I then wanted to develop as much as I possibly could.
And you mean just energetic, hands-on kind of healing?
Yeah. Well, and also, again, like a lot of healers, I found that I had an empathic response with the people I was working with. So in other words, I could feel what their problems were within my own body. But I've managed to find a way of not hanging on to those feelings, if you like. So by recognizing that they weren't mine, they were somebody else's, I could get rid of them. Whereas I understand a lot of healers have problems actually ending up with an accumulation of their clients' problems.
Yeah, very uncomfortable state to be in, I'm sure.
Yes, very. I remember making a conscious decision one day to get into what people call psychic surgery.
Oh,
and so that's where I developed along those lines. So eventually what I ended up being able to do was to literally read inside people's bodies, a bit like a medical MRI scanner, and actually see in 3 dimensions and in real time what was actually going on.
Now, what we've seen here in Australia of psychic surgery is footage from predominantly sort of Indonesia, usually with the agenda to paint it as a fraud, but and it's people literally putting their hands in somebody else's body. Were you getting to that point?
Yes, and I decided not to. Again, it felt to me as though I had a clear choice. I could go either way. I could either go into what they call the intrusive psychic surgery or non-intrusive psychic surgery. And I thought putting my hands into somebody's bodies would scare the life out of me and mind of the people I was working on. And thought I'm not going to go down that route.
I actually don't blame you at all.
So, I mean, they're quite fascinating. Certainly, it's Brazil and the Philippines, as you say, who have the traditions of doing that. And unfortunately, you also have a lot of charlatans working in those kinds of ways by secreting little blood clots around the place and that sort of thing. And so if I felt that if I can work without actually even touching the people I work with, then it's proof to me that I'm doing what I think I'm doing, and it's proof to the person I'm working with that we're doing something that is genuine but also different.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to the Akashic, though, I'm interested in a couple of the sort of practical aspects of the Akashic record.
Right.
Where does the Akashic reside? If we talk, dimensions or densities or realms, where would you say the Akashic lives?
Right. There are actually multiple layers to it. So what you actually have is an Akashic of people. So on a human level, all the word Akashic actually means is record. So it's purely and simply a record of events that occur. So there's an Akashic that works with the Earth and with human activities. Then there's Akashic that works at a solar system level. Then there's another layer that works at a galactic level. And then obviously there's the overall picture, which is part of the universal Akashic. And so essentially it's recorded within, in a scientific way, I suppose you could say it's recorded within space-time. It's actually recorded within energetic swirls within the actual structure of the universe itself.
So how does this relate to what we call the collective consciousness?
You could see, yes, you could see the collective consciousness as being one layer of the Akashic.
Okay, a layer of it.
Yeah.
So the Akashic is, let's say as an example, that the collective consciousness is an in the moment repository of the potentials as well as the thoughts and the various potentials in which way these events could go, and yet once it's done, once it's happened, it becomes part of the Akashic?
Essentially, yes. We live in a universe that is constructed of the energies of freedom of choice. So literally every soul that exists within this universe has absolute freedom of choice to choose their actions. What you cannot do is to act in such a way that removes somebody else's choice to act freely. And so what you have on a human level, we all have that free choice. So we exercise that free choice in taking the decisions we do to carry on with our lives. But once that decision is made, then a fixed point occurs, if you like. And it's that action that is recorded rather than, as you say, the potentials and the possibilities.
So if you wanted to read potentials and possibilities, you'd look at the layer that is the collective consciousness, and if you wanted to look at the history, you look at the level that you call the Akashic.
Yes.
Okay, that's good answer.
It's an immensely complicated question I don't answer properly. But yes, I mean, that's a reasonable summation of it. There are always potential situations that can and cannot occur. And it then depends on what choice is made, either individually or collectively, as to which direction that potential is taken.
Now, you're in Wales. You're I would say some form of the English language, because it varies even between Australia and Wales. But so here, English is your first language. So when you say you read the Akashic, does it come to you in words? And if someone whose first language was German, it would just appear to them in German. What does it look like? Is it images?
It can be a combination of images, and it's more like thoughts than words. Mm-hmm. So yes, whatever language your brain works in or thinks in, then it would be in that form to suit you. Essentially the way, I don't know about other people, but certainly the way in which I work is that I have a very direct and strong connection with my higher self. Mm-hmm. And so basically, we work together, if you like, to look for whatever answers I happen to be looking for at a particular time. And therefore, the answers come through the higher self and then into any room they can find in this crazy brain of mine. And then my brain translates it into the images or words or thoughts that are the answer.
So how much of it then is left up to your personal interpretation? How much do you bring to it?
Hopefully nothing. This is what I try to do, because if I'm looking, the way I found that it works best for me is to, if I'm looking for the answer to a question, is to ask that question from about 25 different directions, from as many directions as I can possibly think of, so that what I'm actually homing in on is what is the reality of the situation, what did actually occur.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is very easy to put an interpretation on it from your own lifetime's experience. And so I try very hard to avoid that by asking, as I say, as many questions as I can think of to try and work out really what the event was.
And when did you realise that what you were doing was reading the Akashic?
Well, again, it would have been sort of mid-20s, really.
And how?
So actually, I've never thought about that one. My very first books, the very first manuscript I ever wrote, I really wanted to look at what human history was all about, why we're here, what we're doing, and why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set about on that, really, of unraveling what is the reality of human history rather than the rubbish that is in the history books. And so I just began on that process. It seemed a perfectly natural way forward for me at the time. So obviously, as I was working with my higher self, it was presumably whatever my higher self had planned as the next thing I was supposed to do in my life was to get this manuscript.
Okay.
And so that's really how I began with it. And I found that I'd come across something which was contradictory to what the history books say. And so I'd think about that and then, as I say, ask various questions around it of the Akashic. And then I'd find a reference to it somewhere, whether it was two people I didn't know speaking, total strangers speaking on a bus or whatever. I'd find that they were having a conversation about the point that I was trying to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd come across, pick up a book somewhere and I'd find a reference to what I was looking at and find that there was a confirmation of what the Akashic said rather than what the history books said.
Yep, I understand.
And so really it became a developmental process from that. And I found that every time that I did come up with an answer to something which was contradictory, somehow or other it was confirmed. So gradually then over a few years, I learned to recognize what was the Akashic and what were my own thoughts, and that I could trust what was coming from the Akashic.
Now, one of the words that you use, and that I hadn't heard before, is the word Velon.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they? Or what are they?
Within the universe, there are 13 races. 13 races of beings who are, if you like, human-sized. So they're souls of an energy pattern that would correspond roughly to what humans are.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 of these races are entirely non-physical. In other words, they exist purely as a soul energy. They have no physical form or physical density. But the outline of the energy that they're constructed from is basically humanoid.
Right.
And 99% of the souls that exist on Earth originate from these 6 races. So we're essentially all humans are aliens, if you like, in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have, in between these non-physical races and the full sort of physical human, we have what the Akashic describes as semi-physical races, and there are 7 of them. So these are the guys who are the UFOs, the aliens, and the Greys, and all the rest of it. So they're all part of that 7 semi-physical races. Now, one of the semi-physical races calls itself Velon. Now, they originate from a galaxy that in the night sky is in the direction of the constellation of Sagittarius. There's about 32 galaxies beyond that, something like that. But in the same way as human, you're human, I'm human, we wouldn't call ourselves human. You'd call yourself Australian, I'd call myself Welsh, or Jewish, or Greek, or Christian, or Muslim, whatever it is. We wouldn't say human. And so the Velon themselves are made up of 6 different races, in the same way as say, you're Australian, I'm Welsh, so that's Australian is one race, Welsh is another race. So the Velon divide themselves up in that same way, and there are 6 of them. They usually call themselves by whatever their race name happens to be, rather than calling themselves Velon. So the 6 races are the Anunnaki, the Hathor, Junda, Jonan, Oa, and Mila. That's what they call themselves. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the Anunnaki. A few less people probably call it the Hathor. Some will have heard of the Oa and Mila, particularly Hawaii, I understand. The Oa and Mila concentrated on in their communications to us. So that's who they really are. They're Velon, but at the same time have these race names. And now the Velon are a strange race in many respects, in that they've kept themselves very much to themselves. They didn't travel out of their home galaxy, as it were. Unlike, say, the Pleiadians or the Greys, who get pretty much everywhere when it comes down to it. So the Velon stayed within their home galaxy. And but somehow or other had a revelatory moment and decided they would come to Earth with the intent of basically removing people off the planet so that they could take over the planet for themselves. Now that sounds like the script from a B sci-fi movie. But this is what they've been doing ever since for the last 300 or so years.
Can I just recap that so I make sure I've understood it? That there's 13 races.
Yes.
That are essentially human-sized. You mean the soul is human-sized?
Yeah, human-shaped in any way.
6 of them have no form, they're just energetic. And 99% of humans here on Earth are from these races.
Yes.
There are then 7 that are semi-physical, one of which is called the Velon, but the Velon have within it 6 races.
Yes.
So when you say they had a revelatory moment to come here, we were already here then, at that point.
Yeah, this only occurred 350 years ago.
350?
Well, no, let me rephrase that a little bit. 1,000 years ago, it occurred in human time frames. 1,000 years ago, they had this revelatory moment. It then took them 650 years to get here.
So what about the concept that we have been interfered with for a lot longer than that?
What do you mean? Things like the Anunnaki story, from Sitchin's material.
Things like that, yeah. The interference on this planet goes back thousands of years.
Rubbish.
Okay. Well, even if you...
No, I understand. A lot of people believe in this very strongly because of things like Sitchin's translations of the Anunnaki material. Now, I have read pretty much all of Sitchin's books on his translations. And I think the most interesting thing about it is a proof, if you like, that this is actually a fabricated story. It's made up by the Anunnaki. If you think of the Old Testament, which Sitchin says the Anunnaki story is the basis of it anyway, but if you think of the way in which the Old Testament is written, what you have is it's just a record. It's a storybook. It's a record of the peoples that are within the story, how they traveled, how they moved, and how they ended up in Canaan. And that's all it is. It just says, this is what we did, and this is how we did it, kind of idea. If you read Sitchin's translations, what virtually every section of the story says, this story is being dictated to a scribe. In other words, somebody has turned up with a full story already put together, and they're dictating that story to somebody who's taken it down into clay tablets. That doesn't happen. Not if it's a genuine history, then it doesn't happen that way. It's just written as people are undergoing those experiences and living through it. They say, well, we're going here. We're traveling from Egypt to Canaan, and this is the experiences we had along the way.
Well, if the Velon only turned up 350 years ago, was there another presence here prior to them that came here to mess around?
No, not really. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a brief history of the universe. Even quicker than Stephen Hawking can do it. The universe first came into being roughly 14 billion years ago, and that's about the only date the scientists seem to have got right as far as the Akashic is concerned. The purpose of the universe is, there is a creationary source out there, shall we say, however you want to describe it, who had a thought, what would happen if? That's about the only way I can describe how these things work. So what would happen if there were souls who had free choice and freedom of movement throughout space with all the energy patterns necessary to support and sustain that life? And that's the reason for the universe, is basically what would happen if every soul within this universe had freedom of choice. And so the first things to be created are the universe envelope itself is a conscious being. It's a soul itself, made up of 13 separate beings, 13 separate souls. But then within that, you have what we look at as a structure of a galaxy is actually a consciousness itself as well, is another soul. So everything within the universe is alive. It is conscious and has choices that it can do whatever it is it chooses to do. But part of the purpose of the universe was then to work with souls who are of this human scale, so that we had choices to be able to move freely around the galaxy, the universe, whatever, and experience and explore whatever it is we chose to explore.
So that we were compatible no matter where we went?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how it was originally. And then the 6 non-physical races said, we're missing something. We can interact with every other soul within the universe, but we can't touch something. We can't feel something physically. And so the decision was made then collectively within the universe to think of what would human life be like. So the semi-physical races were brought into being as a sort of halfway stage, as it were. And then humans, or the Earth, started to form, and our solar system started to form. So basically, the 6 non-physical races were first created 100 million years ago. So you as a soul are 100 million years old. And then the semi-physical races came into being, were created specifically to be semi-physical about 30 million years ago. But in between, about 40 million years ago, the solar system started to form and come into being, started to look at what kind of life it wanted to have and how it could express life. So I know the scientific view is that the Earth is 4 billion years old, but that's based on a meteorite that's come from somewhere where no one knows where it's come from. That was found on the Earth a few years ago, and they put it through some testing equipment and came up with a figure of 4 billion years, which I think is a complete load of rubbish, and the Akashic says is a complete load of rubbish. And actually scientists themselves say it's a complete load of rubbish, because when scientists first started working out how old life was on Earth, they came up with a figure of 25 million years. And that's what the Akashic says, is that 25 million years ago, life started to develop on Earth.
So does that mean that humans, or Earth humans, are the pinnacle of evolution in terms of a vessel that holds soul mass?
No. We're just another layer of experimentation, of choice.
Okay.
See, every single soul that exists within this universe on this kind of human scale is equal. We're all the same. We're no different, whether we're non-physical, semi-physical, or human. We're all essentially equal. So there's no such thing as pinnacles and developments of development and all the rest of it. It's just purely and simply, it's another level of exploration of what is possible.
I guess what I meant by pinnacle is in terms of the most physical vessel.
Right, okay.
In
those terms, yes.
Yes.
Humans are with the densest form of life in the universe, whichever way you want to look at that. Don't forget everything is energy. So we see our bodies as physical, but they're not. They're just highly compacted energy. And so in those terms, yes, humans are the densest form of life in the universe. We're the most highly compacted form of energy forms that exist. Nothing like a human exists anywhere else within the universe. Only within our solar system can human life exist in the form that it's in.
So does that mean that all the ETs are essentially interdimensional as opposed to extraterrestrial?
They're both. Because ETs cannot exist in their normal state within our solar system. They have to alter their energy patterns and their physical densities to actually for us to see them. This is why you get so many reports of UFOs suddenly disappearing from sight, or you'll suddenly see an ET out of the corner of your eye kind of thing. It's because their energy patterns are entirely different to ours. They don't naturally exist at the kind of energy compaction levels that we exist at. So to come into our solar system, they actually have to alter their energy patterns quite radically to make themselves physical and visible.
And what are your thoughts on, let's just pick a couple of the more well-known ETs that are supposedly here, which is the greys and, say, the reptiles. What are your thoughts on why they're here and what their agenda is?
The greys are an interesting bunch. So that's your classic ET, about 3 foot tall, so about a meter, just over a meter tall, grey skin and big black eyes. They don't actually have big black eyes. Their eyes are actually bright yellow with vertical irises. It's just the energy patterns within our solar system means that literally they have to shield their eyes, otherwise they get damaged. So you basically wear eye shades. They have physiological problems. They see their bodies as being unstable and in the process of deteriorating. And so they've come to Earth to learn about human physiology, to see whether they can learn about a more physical form that they could adopt for themselves to make their body stronger. So that's essentially why the greys are here.
That sounds like nature made a mistake somehow in making it.
No, not really, because everything is an experiment. Nobody knows what these things are. This is why we're here, is to find out what happens. And the reason why the semi-physical races are there is to find out what happens. And so, as far as the Greys are concerned, that's how they see their body, and they have slight problems with it. They're being resolved. There's not a major problem ultimately to sort the Greys out, but they're here as much out of curiosity as anything else to see what they can learn from humans.
Do they pose any real threat to humans?
No, nobody does other than the Vlon. All the other races essentially are benevolent to everybody else. They get on very well. It's only the Vlon, for some strange reason, the Vlon seem quite bizarre in their approach to things. So the other races, you've got the Pleiadians, again another semi-physical race. They act like a universal diplomatic corps, if you like. They get involved in pretty much everything that goes on within the universe. And they're regular visitors back and forth to Earth, and they're very human in appearance. You've got the next one in the Blues, they call them. You come across the Blues?
Would that be the ones who were sort of depicted in Indian culture, like the blue deities?
No, not quite. Quite a lot of people have encountered these. They sound like cartoon characters or cartoon characters out of a pantomime or something. They're very short and covered in thick blue hair. But they're geneticists. That's where their interests lie, is within genetics, how genetics are built and how they go together.
Oh, is this what Whitley Strieber described?
Could very well be. I can't remember what Whitley Strieber was writing about, but there is this race who are these blue characters, but they work very closely with the Greys because they're trying to find a genetic answer. Mm-hmm. So they visit the Earth quite a bit as well. And yes, several people have written where they've had close encounters with the alien races. They have described the Blues very clearly and the Greys very clearly. So you got those, and then you got those who come from Sirius, of course. They're very similar in appearance to the Greys, but a bit taller. They're very friendly towards us, have had an awful lot of contact with people on Earth. If you think of, there's a tribe of people in Africa, North Africa, called the Dugon tribe, mm-hmm. who have a very detailed history of Sirius.
Yes.
Known before any Western scientists ever got there. And so yes, so they've had close contact with the Sirian race, and again they're very friendly. The people who've had the most to do with Earth, though, we don't actually have a name for, because their name for themselves doesn't translate into any kind of Earth language. But they originate from a star system known as NGC 584. So that's an astronomer's catalogue number, basically, which is located in the night sky somewhere within the arc of the Pleiadian stars, but there's many galaxies beyond the Pleiades. And they're the ones who worked with the Earth more than any other race, because they are master geneticists. So if the Earth wants a new plant form or a new animal form designed to work on Earth, then she'll call in these beings from the NGC 584 star system, and they'll work closely with the Earth to develop an informed life. They really are superb at what they do without any agenda other than to help whatever planet requires their help.
And what about humanity itself? I mean, like you said, we've got lots of different races here on this planet. Were they involved in the creation of these different races?
No. It is just biodiversity. I mean, the people with black skin live in hot climates because the black skin is most appropriate to a hot climate. People with paler skins live in cooler climates because that's more appropriate to a cooler climate.
But if
It's plain and simply that.
if 99% of humans are from the non-physical races, so are we representing, at least 6 of those races in our physical form?
Well, yes, in each of those races do fall into distinct races, so they are different and separate from each other. And yes, so they would be represented on Earth as being slightly different. But, I mean, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Even a very good psychic wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But there is a certain amount of variation in human form. Obviously, if you look at the Japanese people, they tend to be fairly short with that sort of yellowish colour skin. And then you look at the Nordic races, which are very tall with pale skin. So there are variations that could reflect people coming from one of the 6 non-physical races. But really it's much more to do with human genetic patterns and energy patterns within particular regions that create the variation in human form.
So you said that...
Okay.
No, thank you. That was great. But you said the only ones who really pose a threat are the Velon. But what kind of threat?
Well, essentially, they want humans off the planet. When they first came here about 350 years ago, as I said, they took a look at the place and they said, right, each of the 6 Velon races took a different strategy. So the Anunnaki concocted a story, which is Sitchin's translations. It's based on certain facts, but they've also embroidered it considerably to make it look as though they're man's creators. So what they hoped, what the Anunnaki hoped was that the humans at this time would get hold of Sitchin's translations and go, oh, there are gods, and we'd welcome them in when they turned up.
Okay. At
the present time. That's what it's all about. Now, the Anunnaki story is a combination of stories. So if you go way back into history, what you find is there's an archaeological dig going on at the moment in a place called Göbekli Tepe, which is on the borders of northern Iraq, southern Spain, and southern Turkey, and Turkmenistan, I think it is. And what is there is an old temple complex, what archaeologists are describing as the oldest temple complex ever found on Earth, which they date to be in 14,000 years ago. But the Akashic dates it as more 7,000 years ago. Just on the road from Göbekli Tepe is the ancient biblical city of Ur of the Chaldees, which is where Abraham originated. And the Old Testament is all about Abraham and his descendants, and also Judaism, Christianity, and Islamic views all originate from Abraham. And this area around Göbekli Tepe they called Eden. And they were attacked by a race who came from the north, who they called gods. So this is the origin of where it says in the Old Testament about tall, pale gods coming from the north and mating with the locals. So what you have is, if you look at the people of Turkey and Iraq at the moment, they're pretty much the same appearance. They're medium height, dark-haired, olive-skinned. So you can imagine people at that time living in Eden certainly finding themselves confronted with people who are fair-skinned, fair-haired, and something like 8 or 9 foot tall. Because what these tall northerners were, the people who invaded this area around Ur the Chaldees, were a hangover from a different human race, which scientists call Gigantopithecus. And they no longer exist on the planet, so they have no DNA connection with current humans, Homo sapiens. And so what they did was to mate with people and create this new sort of semi-race, which totally died out. And also the local people, the people who lived in Eden, actually attacked these northerners and destroyed them all. They killed them all, massacred them totally. And this is the reason why they left Eden, was to get away from the fact that they had killed their gods, traveled down into Egypt, and then became the Jewish race, which then formed the Old Testament, and these stories have been written as experiences of what they'd experienced as a race.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the Anunnaki story. So you have these northern gods, tall, pale northern gods, come down and mate with the local inhabitants, and they create this new genetic strain. But then on top of that, within Sitchin's translations, you have planets that are talked about, which are actually the planets of the Velon home solar system and the events that occurred within the Velon solar system. So the planet called Marduk hit one of the moons of one of the other planets and destroyed life on that planet. You know, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And you also have a planet called Nibiru within the Anunnaki, the Velon solar system. Now, the Velon solar system has 9 planets. Trying to remember offhand. It's been a while since I looked at this stuff, but 9 planets. So 3 of it, and it's got 2 suns. Now, 3 planets, or whichever way it is, 3 planets orbit around one sun, and 4 planets orbit around the other sun, and then 1 planet orbits both suns. So it has a huge orbit, and that's Nibiru. And the Anunnaki originate on that planet, traveling planet. And so what they've done is to create a story that combines human history, very early human history, and their own history, to try and make us believe that we are their creation, that the Anunnaki created us. But it's a false story. Now, I'm not saying Sitchin made it up for whatever reason, because in fairness, having read all of Sitchin's books, he has done his extreme best to translate these clay tablets that are written in Sumerian cuneiform writing that have been buried in the sands for 5,000 years. So I'm not saying he's wrong, I'm saying the story itself is false.
If they've only been here 350 years, we weren't doing a real good job of it before then, either. So...
well, no. If you want to look at human history, then it's very different, again, to how the historians view it. As far as they're concerned, early form of human life appeared on the planet. I don't know what figure they put to it these days, about 40 million years ago, something like that. And we've slowly developed since. And that's not correct.
No.
What we have is we have several different forms of very early humans, potentially, living on the planet. That the Earth herself is a consciousness. She's a soul that creates life. So the animal and plant life on the planet is actually a creation of hers. The Earth herself chose and designed Earth and plant life, plant and animal life.
But with the help of that race that you mentioned earlier?
With the help of that race that was mentioned earlier, yeah, the NGC 584. As part of that, obviously she also developed human forms, because that was the purpose of our solar system, was to explore the potential of a human body form. Now, every single planet within our solar system supported life at that time. So when life began 40 million years ago within our solar system, every single planet had life on it. And there were 13 planets originally, not the 9 we currently have. And 4 of the planets disintegrated, for want of a better way of describing them, because if you think of a planet as being a soul, a consciousness within its own right, then it has the choice that every other soul within the universe has. And they decided they did not want to be a part of this human experiment. And so they decided to leave the solar system. Unfortunately, that created difficulties in that 2 of the planets exploded. And what they did was to rip through the solar system and destroy all life on all the planets other than Earth. Earth herself came very close to giving up, and we nearly lost all the life on the planet at that time. This was 3.8 million years ago. So that's where your dinosaurs were destroyed, and all the rest of it was 3.8 million years ago. And but the Earth decided to start again. And at that time, what she did was to develop Cro-Magnon man. What we know as Cro-Magnon man. Cro-Magnon. And what you find is Cro-Magnon man is located on every single continent at the same time. So where the paleoanthropologists start digging around looking for old bones, what they find is that our ancestors, Cro-Magnon man, which later developed into Homo sapien, originated spontaneously 3.6 million years ago on every single continent. But they don't want us to know that there's an awful lot of what is buried beneath the soil that remains hidden, quite deliberately by scientists. On one level, it's to do with they don't want to do anything that contradicts the Bible. That's written into the charter of all archaeological associations around the world. And also, of course, what you got underneath it all is this Anunnaki story, which has been going around for a very long time. And the higher levels of Freemasons, for example, and the Illuminati firmly believe in that story. And that is what they're trying to present as fact to most people. But when you start looking properly at archaeological research and paleoanthropological research, you'll find that every single continent on Earth had Cro-Magnon arrive spontaneously 3.6 million years ago.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really sit well with the whole...
No, it's all a pack of lies. It's history, human history as far as it's presented in its official sense, really bears no resemblance to the reality of what has gone on Earth.
But even in when I made the comment that we weren't doing a great job of it, I mean, even if we just looked at the last sort of 1,000 years in terms of the war and...
Well, sure. No, I was coming to that. So what we have is, 3.6 million years ago, we start off with Cro-Magnon man. And that developed very, very slowly. I mean, let's face it, you've got a nice life, haven't you? You know, you're wandering around a planet that is free of pollution. You've got all the food sources you could ever possibly want. There's no wars, there's no battles, there's no animosity between peoples. Why would you want to change?
There's no worry about what you want to do when you grow up and earning a living and paying the bills. Yeah.
And so that's what they did. They didn't need to develop very strongly. So this is no sort of I'm not criticizing Cro-Magnon man, as it were. This is not a prejudice against them, but essentially they were more like animals than they were humans, because they didn't have a whole soul within the body. What they had essentially was a group soul. So, as you were talking earlier about a mass consciousness, then essentially they existed on that kind of level. So they existed within a mass consciousness, but weren't really individuals themselves. And what was needed, or what was part of the purpose of this universe, was to find out whether we could have individual human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And Cro-Magnon was very, very slow in developing into a body form that could accommodate a whole soul. So what we had was our friends from the NGC 584 star system were asked by the Earth to come and investigate what the problem was. Why were Cro-Magnons so slow in developing into a full human being? And they took up residence on Lemuria. This is where Lemuria comes from within our mass conscious memories, is that it was somewhere where humanity was investigated as to find out why we were so slow in developing. Ultimately, the question was not fully resolved, even by the NGC, and so collectively, those souls who wanted to be a part of what was going on Earth decided to start another experiment, and we know that experiment as Atlantis. Now, Atlantis did exist. It was a major continent that spanned between the coast of Ireland and the Caribbean basin. And at the time, the continent of South America was much further out into the Pacific than it is now. And so what we did on Atlantis was to genetically manipulate the basic body form of Cro-Magnon.
When you say we, what do you mean we then?
All those souls of the non-physical races who wanted to come to Earth to experiment what it is like to be physical and human.
Okay. So we were doing that from a non-physical perspective, though?
No, because what we wanted was a physical body.
Okay.
So we worked with Cro-Magnon, a body form, but developed it, accelerated development.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up with a human body form that fulfilled all the requirements that the Earth had set for herself and that the 6 non-physical races had set for themselves, which is a physical human being who is capable of accommodating the whole of the soul of one of the non-physical races. Now, that human being, in capital letters as a human being, was able to do so much more than we are capable of doing now. Mm. So in other words, it was highly developed psychic capabilities, psychic potential. We communicated to each other psychically. We could communicate with all living things psychically. We needed very little in the way of food because the body was very much less dense than we were used to. And so as far as the Earth was concerned, we had achieved what she set out to achieve, which was a perfect human being that fulfilled all the criteria of everybody within the universe.
So what went wrong?
Energy, unfortunately. And it's always energy. Everything comes back to energy in the end. What we found was that the Earth herself resonates at a frequency of 7.56 cycles per second, or 7.56 hertz. Mm-hmm. And that base note frequency of the Earth is the base chakra, the root chakra of every single living thing on the planet resonated at 7.56 cycles per second. But that frequency was too low a frequency for the whole of the soul to remain intact within the physical body.
So at the time of Lemuria, you could incarnate with the whole of the soul, but you couldn't hold it. You couldn't hold it for long.
Well, not quite Lemuria, but Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Atlantis is where we developed this body form, yeah. Exactly, that's right. The human lifespan at the time of Atlantis could be anything up to 2,000 years, 3,000 years. So, the old biblical one about Methuselah living until he was 980 or something. Mm-hmm. It was actually true.
Having babies at 800 and stuff.
Yeah. So, but that was our lifespan. But we couldn't hold the whole of the soul within the body. So we started losing some of the higher functions, some of the higher psychic functions.
Okay.
And this is when we started experimenting to see if there were ways around that. And so there are a number of people who have very bad memories of Atlantis, of genetic engineering, genetic experimentation, and all this sort of stuff. And this is from right at the end of Atlantis, because when we were having problems, people did experiment a lot. And we ended up with all sorts of bizarre combinations of gene structures within people's bodies. But then we ended up in a situation where, again, this is a huge story, but essentially we ended up with a bacteria which we couldn't control. And so what we decided to do collectively, so all the souls who were on Atlantis at that time, collectively decided to prevent this bacteria reaching other areas of the planet. We destroyed the continent. So literally we sank the continent of Atlantis into the Earth's magma core to destroy and contain this bacteria. And the Earth took 40,000 years to recover from that. So we destroyed Atlantis something like 65,000 years ago.
This isn't the black goo, is it?
Is that? Well, there's black goo stuff.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. That's something entirely different.
Okay, cool.
So we destroyed Atlantis, and it took the Earth 40,000 years to recover. And so we came back to the Earth 20,000 years ago. By we, I mean all of those souls from the non-physical races who wanted to come back and continue with this human experiment, came back to Earth, and we started again, more or less. And we found the same problem. We had that 7.56 base note frequency, which we tried finding ways of overcoming. So this is what, for example, what the pyramids are for in Egypt. The Egyptian pyramids, South American pyramids, Tibetan pyramids, you name it, wherever the pyramids you find on the planet. Mm. If you stood in the so-called king's chamber of the pyramids and you made a tone, a voice tone of a specific frequency, then the whole chamber would resonate at that frequency, and you could bring the whole of the soul back into the body. Mm-hmm. Worked very well for a while, but even that we started having difficulties with that. So what we decided to do collectively was to divide the soul into two. The higher self, so-called higher self, makes up about 3/4 of the total soul. And then there's the physical self, which makes up 1/4 of the total soul. Mm-hmm. So what we decided to do was to live a series of lifetimes, gaining knowledge as to what frequency we needed to alter our bodies to, and the Earth needed to alter her frequencies to, so that we could maintain the whole of the soul within the body.
And bring back the higher self and
bring the higher self back into the physical body.
Okay.
And we started doing this 7,000 years ago. It's what the Akashic calls as the human plan. So literally what we're trying to do is become human again, because as far as the Earth is concerned, for the last 7,000 years, we've been subhuman, which explains a great deal about human history.
Yeah.
And this is where we are at the moment. We're at the end of that 7,000-year period. This is what the December the 21st, 2012 date is all about. Is we have worked out what the new frequency needs to be. Everybody on the planet has raised their frequency. This occurred October 2011.
So this 7.56 hertz you mentioned, is that what's known as the Schumann resonance?
Yes.
And that's the one that's been rising?
It's raised, yes. The Earth raised her own frequency back in May 2000 to what the new frequency needs to be, and that is 3.5 kilohertz, which is considerably higher than 7.56 hertz. So we've gone from 7.56 to 3,500 hertz. Now the Earth changed her frequencies back in May 2000 to that new frequency. And humans being humans, it took us 10 years further to actually start catching up properly. But by the end of October 2011, we also had raised our energy levels. So we had that frequency parity back with the Earth at 3.5 kilohertz. And that's where we've been for the last year, is at that 3.5 kilohertz level, which means that we can now move on. So this is what the end of this year is about, the Mayan calendar and all the rest of it, is we are at the point where we can end this human plan, where we can bring the whole of the higher self back into the physical body.
Sorry, you've just brought up so many things for me. October last year, you say?
Yes.
So
October the 29th was the actual date.
So each individual has made a conscious soul choice, at least.
Soul choice, yes. Some have made it very consciously because they're aware of everything. Most, unfortunately, it's been made on a higher self level.
To either raise our own vibration to match that of the Earth and to stay here, or to leave.
That's the one. Yep.
When do you... Because I personally had an experience around this time last year, sort of end of August, beginning of September, where I felt a huge shift or split within the collective. That people had made a choice at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be the choice they made.
Well, actually, the choice was made in 1996 originally, because there's new energy patterns began in 1996. They've been building up through the years up until last October.
Maybe I'm just a bit slow on the uptake.
That's the one. Well, I mean, in fairness, we're operating at a frequency that is well below what we need to be. And we're operating with only 1/4 of our full knowledge and potential within the body. So it was inevitable that humans were going to be slow in catching up with things. So, there's no criticism for what our activities anywhere throughout the universe. Trying to understand what it is we've been through, because we've been through one hell of a lot. Humans collectively have been through the mill, literally. We've been through every single possible experience that could ever be on Earth in order to learn and understand and to find a way of bringing back the whole of the soul back into the body.
Well, this is a subject that's come up many times on the radio show that I do and in my various interviews about the numbers of people who are choosing to leave the planet right now, and in the most amazing ways. The suicide rate has gone through the roof.
Yep.
I've had reports from both federal and local and state police that they're under orders not to talk about how many people are committing suicide, jumping off trains, in front of trains and off bridges and things. Murder-suicides, freak accidents.
Exactly. To give you the kind of scale we're talking about here, in 1996, according to the Akashic, the world population peaked at 7.4 billion. Okay, that was the human population in 1996. Now, remember the official figures. Last year, the Akashic said that the human population is between 3.8 and 3.9 billion.
So how can we be getting told it's more than twice that? And having that justified?
Propaganda. It's propaganda. It's fear-mongering. The Illuminati-led governments want us to believe that we're running out of resources and that they need to take greater and greater control over the population so that they can control everything that goes on. This is what the New World Order is all about. If you look at something like the Georgia Guidestones in America.
Yes. Lovely piece of artwork they are, aren't they?
Well, 1979 they were built. And it says in 8 languages that the Earth's population must be reduced to a sustainable 500 million.
Yep.
If you look at the UNCED agreement in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, it's written into that massive document that government policy of all the governments who signed this document is to reduce the world population to 500 million within this century.
It's mentioned in Agenda 21 too, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what the UNCED document is Agenda 21 on the Biodiversity Treaty.
Yes.
So that's their stated aim. is to kill us off in any way, to make us malleable and do whatever it is they can to us to kill us off, whatever. But that's a Velon agenda, because the Velon control the Illuminati, and the Illuminati control the Bilderbergers, governments, Freemasons, you name it.
Well, there's every reason to believe that the Illuminati have been here working behind the scenes for a lot longer than 350 years. So if the Velon are behind the Illuminati...
Well, yeah, I can understand this. I've done a lot of research into this, and there's actually a book I wrote with a friend of mine, Dave Morgan, called Project Human Extinction, which explains all of this. Sorry?
That's a catchy title.
Yes. And unfortunately, it's true. But so it's out there. If people want to read the book, it explains where the Illuminati came from, all the various levels of the Illuminati, various organizations that have called themselves Illuminati over history. Because don't forget, the Illuminati just means the illuminated, ones who are wiser, they have more knowledge than others. So you'll find religious groups, for example, calling themselves Illuminati because they believe they have the whole truth of what the world is all about. So they are more illuminated than other people. The other side of it, of course, is that the one who brings illumination is Lucifer. Mm-hmm. That's what Lucifer means, is the one who brings illumination. So you get all of that stuff mixed up all together as well. So there's a huge amount throughout history which is convoluted and really is a different kind of organization to what the current Illuminati aims are and what they're up to. So the Illuminati, that is basically what is also known as the Bavarian Illuminati, which was set up by Ansel Rothschild and Adam Weishaupt back in 1776. Now, Weishaupt, if I can use a term that I really hate using because I don't like it, is a walk-in. Mm-hmm. And the thing that walked into Weishaupt was a Velon. And what it did was to take control of the Illuminati at its inception.
Right.
And that's how they gained control of it all, because how can I put this? I also remote view. I can look at things from a distance without too much of a problem. I don't find it a problem in any way. It comes quite naturally to me. And I keep a very close eye on Velon activities and what's going on, just to find out what really is happening and all the rest of it. And a couple of years ago, I can't remember the exact date offhand, the Illuminati and Velon made a mistake. And so it allowed the release of a lot of information that had previously been hidden into the Akashic. So I was able to pick up on what had been going on and what is going on now. And essentially, the Illuminati were destroyed.
In what sense?
Just a few years ago, physically destroyed a few years ago. If you're working on a soul level rather than a physical level, then your lifespan is very different. And so this is what the Illuminati were all about. Virtually all of the original members of the Illuminati were still alive 350 years later as the Illuminati. And this is under the Velon influence of... So literally George Washington was still alive as an Illuminati 3 years ago. I know how bizarre that one sounds, but that's how they worked, and that's how they persuaded people.
I'm still trying to get my head around that.
Yeah, well, think of it. If somebody comes to you and says, I can make you immortal in your physical body if you work with me and use the powers that I have available to me, then an awful lot of people will go along with that.
Yeah, that's quite attractive to some people, I'm sure.
Yeah, you look at the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, whatever, they're power crazy.
And they all do seem to live to a decent ripe old
Yeah,
age before
quite
they.
right old age, because this is what drives them. They have a huge drive within them. They want to hold on to the power that they have. So if an alien turns up and says, I can give you that power, I can give you that long life that you crave if you work with me. And this is what happened. And so this is what happened with the Illuminati. They were taken over by the Velon right at their inception.
So what do you mean by they were destroyed, though, 3 years ago?
It's a very convoluted story, that one. But essentially, because of these energy changes that are going on the planet, then certain things of Velon activity and Illuminati activity couldn't be maintained.
Mm.
And it broke some of the energy patterns that the Velon were using to maintain their hold over the Illuminati. And by doing that, it literally blew some of the Velon energies off the planet, which literally blew the bodies of the Illuminati apart.
Oh.
Because they could no longer be sustained by the Velon frequencies. So it's basically that kind of process that went on. It was only a few years ago.
So you also said you said this energy or this information was released into the Akashic. Were they actually able to hold information that and stop it from being released into the Akashic to be read?
Yes, if you have sufficient energy potential, which is what the Velon were deliberately doing, using some of their energy patterns to create a blank, if you like, within the Akashic, or to not allow information to be released of events.
Mm.
Then yes, it can be done, but it requires a vast amount of energy to do that. But this, unfortunately, is what they did. And anyway, I'll give another plug for that book, if you like, the Project Human Extinction, because it's got the full details and dates of this event and everything else in it.
Okay, great.
But that's what happened, and the pattern broke. And so it meant that the Illuminati effectively lost their power. And that gap was filled by politicians. Because you've got a lot of politicians who obviously know about the Illuminati and been pushing to become members for a long time. Mm. So you have this a sort of political coup, if you like, occurring, as I say, about 3 years ago. And so the whole situation started to shift a little bit. So the Velon energies were disrupted and broken. So in other words, literally the whole pattern of their power base of the Illuminati broke at that point, and it could not be reconstructed. Which means that as humans are developing and moving forwards to this 21-12-12 date, the energies that are holding us back and causing us a lot of problems have been broken, so there's nothing holding us back anymore. But even so, there are an awful lot of people on the planet who have already undergone full soul reintegration. And they're scattered in isolated communities around the planet. So it was known that it was possible for people to bring the whole of the higher self back into the body, even with the problems the Velon were creating. Mm-hmm. But with now the total disruption of the Velon hold on the Illuminati and governments, then literally there's nothing to stop anybody from going ahead and completing this process. You said you felt this divide, this schism occurring within humanity of those who were saying, no, I can't stay, and those who are saying, I want to stay. But even those who said they can't stay, there's nothing to stop them staying if that's what they really want to do. So nobody's saying you're a bad person, you have to leave the planet. The option is still open to every single soul that is still physical on the planet. You can still do it. It just means clearing out a bit of rubbish out of your life, basically. That's all it needs.
So if you're still here, there's still a chance that you can change your mind. And
absolutely.
So if our bodies have raised their frequency so dramatically, how do we know? Is there any physical sign or symptom that will tell us that we're in the process of doing this? or is it simply you'll know because you'll you'll be basically the whole soul will be returned?
Well, as things stand at the moment, I mean, we've obviously been changing for a few years now, since '96, essentially. A lot of people have been changing. And we saw that first with the change of the colour of the chakras. So everybody, the 7 chakras are the tradition of the rainbow colours, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet colours.
Yeah.
Well, those changed. So the first chakra went to a sort of coppery gold colour. The second chakra went to a petrol-y blue colour, the third to a petrol green. And then by the time you got to the fourth chakra, you were starting to get into transparencies. So pure energy without any colour. So that was the intermediate stage. And literally there is nobody on the planet alive now who has the old chakra colours. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, I still see the old chakra colours, but that's because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking at what is actually there. And then after that, it changes to a transparency. So all the chakras become totally transparent. And then the next stage is the chakras disappear altogether. Because what the chakras actually are aspects of the soul within the body. They're just concentrations of soul energy at particular points within the body. And each point relates to each of us as a person, as an individual, also on an emotional level and a physical level. So if you can read the chakras to work out why you've got health problems, for example. Because, let's think, everybody has problems with the abdominal organs, there's the third chakra organs. What the third chakra has dealt with or continues to deal with, is personal power, issues of personal power, how seriously you're taken by others around you, and the emotions connected with those situations. So, for example, the liver deals with fear and guilt. The gallbladder deals with anger. The stomach deals with literally things you can't stomach. And the intestine deals with the emotions that we're trying to process but haven't quite dealt with. So everybody's got problems in this region. I mean, this is why diets never work. It's got nothing to do with the food we eat. It's about the emotions we haven't expressed. And so where people are having major problems is within the third chakra, particularly in the liver, because there's an awful lot of fear in the world at the moment. So this is what a lot of people are dying from, is things like liver disease, liver cancer, whatever. Is because that fear builds within people, and they don't understand where it's coming from, then they can't express it, and so the liver eventually just breaks down and collapses. So that's how the chakras worked within the body. Literally, it was the way for the soul to communicate to us, to say, you're going wrong in life, you need to change a direction in life, and here's a symptom of illness to tell you how to do it.
Right.
I've worked with this for over 30 years, and I've never found anybody who falls out of the chakra patterns on the planet. All the thousands of people I've worked with as a healer, everybody, single person on the planet, falls into the same identical patterns related to the chakras. So it does work, and it works extremely well. You can tell somebody's personality just by what their symptoms are.
Yeah, right.
But as we bring the higher self into the body, we don't need the chakras any longer, because the communication from the higher self is instantaneous. So we don't need the slightly separate chakra divisions that we had before. So that, if you like, is the penultimate stage, is where we have no chakras. We've brought as much of the higher self as we can into the body for now, until we're ready to make that final change into full consciousness. And there are quite a few million people around the planet in that state at the moment.
So is that final stage December 21?
So December the 21st, it should have happened before. We had, if you like, the year between the end of 2011 and the end of 2012. We should have had this year where we sorted ourselves out, and people gradually changed. So from the end of October last year, they could have changed throughout this year.
Mm-hmm.
But because of all the political shenanigans that are going on and the very deliberate attempt using things like HARP to hold us back and prevent this change from occurring, then obviously it's been a bit more of a fight and a struggle than it was intended to be.
It's been an interesting year, actually, in terms of the fear-mongering and the supposed events that we've been told will take place, and what's actually happened.
Yes,
There's
very little in comparison.
Yeah, very little.
Yep.
So it's just, the fear-mongering's gone into overdrive, and so you're saying that's part of the deliberate attempt to keep people into the fear state so that they don't go through this immigration process, yeah.
That's right. Well, one of the biggest weapons they're using is HARP. And HARP is the American military, who obviously control HARP, have admitted that they're flooding the planet with extra low frequency energies.
Mm.
And this is deliberately to attempt to reverse this shift from the 7.56 hertz to the 3.5 kilohertz.
So to what benefit, though? I mean, if their agenda is to, eliminate the population to under 500 million people.
Mm-hmm. It's about control. That's all it's about. It really is about control. If you look at several of the books that are written around Sitchin's translations of the Anunnaki, it says we're a slave race. We were built by the Anunnaki as a slave race. Mm. This is what Sitchin's story is all about. We were built as slaves to work in the gold mines of Africa on the Anunnaki behalf. Mm. And therefore that's in the back of people's minds, is that we're a slave race. And what they're trying to do is to recreate that slave race. So what the agenda appears to be, the Illuminati agenda appears to be, is that we have 500 million people on the planet who are slaves, literally slaves, to whatever the elite, however many elite are left. So there'll be a few thousand elite that are connected with the Illuminati and the Velon, and the 500 million become slaves to them. So they just have their power, and that's what it's really all about, is just holding on to power.
And the more people who are able to integrate more of their soul, the less their chances are of doing this.
We'll just throw it all away, because they cannot then have control and power and fear all a population that has the whole soul within the body. That's why they're trying to stop it.
So the Akashic is telling you what's already taken place. So how do you extrapolate from that what's going to occur over the next few months?
Well, this is the problem. The Akashic doesn't. It doesn't predict.
But you do?
No, I make very, very few predictions. The Mayan calendar ended on the 29th of October 2011. Mm-hmm.
Kalaman's date.
So Kalaman's date is correct. And so it gave us this year to, as I say, sort ourselves out and all the rest of it. But we've had a hell of a struggle because of all this fear-mongering and the use of HARP frequencies to try and slow everything down. And so nobody really knows. We're faced with a situation that has never existed anywhere within this universe, ever. Nobody is going through the kind of processes that humans are going through at the moment. It's never, ever been done before. This is the first time. And so nobody knows really how it's going to work, or which way things are going to go, and all the rest of it. All we have at the moment is a rough idea of the number of people who have said, yes, they can make this and they're going to go through with it, and the number of people who have said, no, they can't, we're not going to go through with it, we're going to die, leave our bodies behind and return to our place of soul origin. We're going to go back to the 6 races.
And you can look at the Akashic and see what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Where are we at the moment?
Roughly, what we're looking at on the face of it is something like 2.4 billion people have said they will.
Mm-hmm.
So bearing in mind the current population is about 3.8 billion, it means that those who are going to change are in the majority. And those who are not is, the remainder 1.4 billion people.
Do you see major Earth changes and catastrophic circumstances as being a way that some of these people leave, or do you think the Earth itself, having made the choice that she's made, is going to do this gently?
Well, there are a lot of indications as to what is likely to happen as far as the Earth is concerned. For example, there's no such thing as tectonic plate movement. What has happened is over history, over time, the Earth has expanded. So all the continents were more or less in the same positions as they are now. The Earth has just got bigger.
Yep.
And at a couple of points, he's actually got smaller and then increased in size again. So at the moment, the Earth is 10% below her maximum size. Sorry, close to 5% below her maximum size, the size she was on Atlantis. So if you think of the Earth as a consciousness, her consciousness expands and contracts to suit human consciousness expansion and contraction.
It's like she's breathing.
Literally, yes. She's working with us. So the root chakra is called the root chakra because it literally connects the human soul into the soul of the Earth. So we are all interconnected with the planet herself. Mm-hmm. And so as we alter our situations, then she responds as well. And so the Earth needs to get a little bit bigger than she is now. And so we should have seen, for example, the San Andreas fault should have popped 20 years ago because she needs to get bigger. She needs that room for expansion. But unfortunately, what we also have is HARP frequencies are being used to hold fault lines together. So although things like the Chile earthquake were caused by HARP quite deliberately, there are other regions which are ready to expand that HARP is being used to hold closed. And so, the Pacific Rim, there have been many predictions of massive earthquakes and tsunami hitting, the eastern coast, is where Sydney is.
Yeah.
Eastern coast of Australia.
Oh, yeah, I shouldn't be here already.
Well, there have been a lot of predictions of that happening. And, we saw with the Japanese earthquake a few years ago that the rim is shifting. It's trying to move. But, as I say, HARP is being used to stitch it together and prevent that from happening because they don't want the Earth expanding to full consciousness, in the same as they don't want people moving into full consciousness because then they lose their control. It's an immensely narrow-minded, ridiculous view that the Illuminati have. But that's what they seem to have. They're determined to prevent this change from occurring because then they lose their position of power and their controls.
So does that mean that when she finally does get the opportunity to expand, she's going to do it sort of rather sharply and quickly? Yeah.
It'll be spectacular, yeah. And this has been a problem that has been discussed by all souls connected with the Earth for a long time now as to how to prevent a nuclear winter occurring, because obviously what's the point of reaching the point where we achieve what we set out to achieve and then all die because there's no food on the planet because of nuclear winter. So there's all sorts of combinations of factors being discussed and looked at, and this is why I can't say to you this is what is going to happen, because literally nobody knows. There is no way of predicting what is to happen over these next 3 months, or even the next 50 years. Because one of the things that's a little bit in doubt at the moment is that there are a lot of people who have said, I'm ready to make this change, but they've done so hopefully because they're not in any shape or form ready to make this change. And therefore, at some point, they will have to die because they cannot sustain their position on the planet because their energy frequencies will be too low. So, do these people have to die before the 21st of December 2012, or will they be allowed to live out their natural lifespan for the next 40, 50 years? See, nobody knows the answer to that one.
Okay.
So this is what I mean by it. It's impossible to predict what is really going to happen over the next few years. I can tell you what the world's going to be like in 2050, but not what it's going to be like between now and 2050.
Sorry, did you say you know what it'll be like in 2050?
Yes, it'll be like it was on Atlantis. No pollution of any kind. We'll be able to psychically communicate with each other, communicate with every living thing, freely travel around the planet by translocation, which is literally all you can do is remote view a spot, think about it, and you can move the body along with the thought, and so you can shift continents just by thinking about it.
But how do you know that?
That kind of life is what we should be living, and we will be again. But and for those who make this change by 21/12/12, will be able to do so almost immediately.
So is there anything we can consciously do to make this change?
Work with your higher self. That's all that you can really do. So the best thing to do is to make sure that your communication with your higher self is as strengthened as possible, and that you listen to what your higher self is saying to you. Now, I know a lot of people complain about, my higher self is trying to say this to me, but I want it in writing because I want to know what's being said so I don't miss it or misunderstand it. And it doesn't happen that way. Communication from the higher self is basically intuition. So you can be doing something and you think, what I really must do is this. I must sort out the situation with Great Aunt Elsie. It's been hanging on for years and years and years, and I've never done anything about it. That's communication from your higher self.
Uh-huh.
Because literally, by leaving situations unresolved like that, you're holding on to all the emotional issues and problems that you've never sorted out and let go of. Literally, what that does is take up space that your higher self could occupy within the body. So we need to clear all of those out.
What about relationships?
Can I plug another book?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, my latest book is called Synthesis. And what it does is to go through basic overall history of humanity and what's been going on. But most importantly, what's in the back of that book are some exercises for people to do for themselves. And what it does is it's a series of meditations where you can work with your higher self, reinforce the connection with your higher self so the communication becomes so much easier. And then there's another meditation which allows you to access the Akashic for yourself so that you can work out what you need to do for you and how to resolve those situations for yourself. And there are a few other exercises as well in the back of that book to help you clear out this emotional debris that's within your system. It's not impossible. If people want to go through this change, this soul reintegration process, there is absolutely nothing stopping them from doing so. Even if they said, no, they don't want to do it in the past, doesn't matter, they can change their mind. As long as they're prepared to put the work in to do it. And all that work is gaining this connection with the higher self and clearing out the emotional debris. And that's it. That's all you need to do.
That all sounds so easy.
It is. I've been working with quite a few people over the last few years who've been looking at this process for themselves. And they're scared stiff for doing it to start with. They are absolutely petrified of actually taking responsibility of looking at what their emotional problems are or dealing with Great Aunt Elsie or whoever it is in your life. And then they start to do it and they suddenly realize everything, it's hard to start with, but once you've started, everything starts to fall into place. I mean, everything, your whole life just smooths out and all the problems disappear because you resolved that situation.
But what about if you've got what about if you've got an old Aunt Elsie type character in your life who is just a negative, disruptive force?
Well, I think most people have got those.
Yeah. So what do we do with those? I mean, are we supposed to make peace with them?
Well, you can do. If there's a way to do it, then yes.
I mean, it doesn't mean having to have them in your life, does it?
Yeah, well, I'll give you my example. I mentioned my mother earlier, literally preventing me from investigating the psychic side of things, and what I could do was in the Akashic and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I tried for many years to explain to her what I was doing, why I was doing it. And all I ever met from her was resistance and total opposition. And I said, that's enough. And I have had no contact with any member of my family for the last 12 years. Literally, I just walked away from them. I said, get stuffed. I'm not having you in my life any longer.
Right.
And it worked, you know. It sounds like a harsh thing to do. It sounds like a difficult thing to do. But for a lot of people, that is the best way of dealing with it, is to say, I've had enough of this. Go away.
But the important part is dealing with your emotions around it.
You're the ones carrying it.
Yep.
You know, I mean, more often than not, the people who cause any problems don't know they're causing any problems, because you never tell them that they're causing any problems.
And
so you're the one with emotion.
Well, there's also, you know, I mean, there are psychopaths aplenty, and many of us have to deal with exactly. But many of us have them in our lives and in our personal lives, and they know they're disruptive.
Yes. So that is what you have to do, is walk away from them. Mm. Get rid of them out of your life.
But the whole, you know, a lot of the New Age talk is, you know, you've got to be light and love and forgive and you know.
No, if I could use a very English word for that, bollocks.
Bollocks. We know that one too.
Good. I thought the Oz might. But it's true. I mean, you know, this thing. You know, I've had people come on to me, emails, whatever, and say, "Oh, well, surely we must love the Velon, because after all, they're only misguided." And that's where that word comes in. You know, it's utter rubbish. I mean, why do you want to love your enemies? It's not going to change them. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference to how they act. But what you need to do is to change the way in which you act. So you need to tell them to get stuffed. And you need to sort out this emotional debris that you're carrying around with you.
Yep. You've got to let go of the emotional stuff that you've got going on with them. And yep.
You do that, you're there. Literally. You can change overnight.
Agreed.
That's all it is.
Agreed.
Yeah. And that's it, you know, people see it as difficult and all the rest of it, but it really isn't. As I say, I've been working with many people over months now with emails, and that's what they're finding, is that once they start, it suddenly becomes very, very easy. Everything falls into place. Their life, all the problems in their life just smooth out. They're gone. Trouble-free. Everything just happens exactly as it should be, and they know they're ready.
Do you, in your healing work, do you work with people remotely? Or do they have to come in physically see you?
I have done in the past. I tend not to at the moment. The reason for that is, in trying to find out what the Velon are up to, they've been watching me quite a lot, and I've been attacked quite severely by the Velon.
Energetically?
Which has resulted in a lot of physical damage to my body.
Right.
And so my concern is that if I go off and remotely view somebody for healing work, and I then making them a target for the Velon who are watching me.
Gotcha.
That I really don't want to do, because, you know, that then becomes not very clever. Mm-hmm. So I will still do it sometimes, but I need to be extra careful to make sure that there are no Velon watchers, or even NSA watchers, because they're under NSA watch a lot of the time as well.
Mm. Oh, well, hi. Hi, if you're listening. And as for your books, they're available from Cygnus, aren't they? So it's cygnus-books.co.uk.
Yes, Amazon have banned them all.
Oh, that's good of them. Hmm.
Yeah, they have never, ever... I know quite a few people who have tried ordering through Amazon, and they tell you they're unavailable. And Amazon have never, ever placed an order with the publishers.
You're being blacklisted, Chris.
I'm afraid so. Must be doing something right.
You must be. That's always a good sign.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you very, very much
Well, pleasure to speak with you. Hope it made some kind of sense along the way.